Today I have a red stripy but wavy print to show you on a shirt dress. I'm really excited about this one. Love this pattern and this dress. So stay tuned. Sneaky peek. Hi sewing friends, my name's Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. I am coming today from my backyard and I'm trying to camouflage. Look at this. I'm wearing my leafy print Tallin dress from Itch to Stitch that I made a little while ago. I mentioned in a previous video that even though I'm at home, I don't want to be wearing just random things, you know, pulling out the rags, the pajamas. I'm trying to get dressed up nice every day so that I can feel better. And my family also appreciates me looking nice, you know, obviously. Today I'm sharing with you McCall's 8031. It's an amazing pattern. It's a shirt dress, one of the newer releases. I purchased this pattern in late January, just when I got back from Chile, and I bought it in the PDF format. The first pattern I tried in that format and I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw. I do have a few printed patterns and you get the tissue paper and those big papers that you have to fold out, and all the instructions, they are tiny and that brownish paper, you know. Well, the instructions and everything looks so big and clear. The diagrams look amazing in the PDF formats and they are more expensive. But I can get them instantly as I can get indie patterns in the PDF format. I thought this pattern was good value. There's lots of views there. Before I share with you everything about the dress, I want to take a minute and say thank you to all the lovely ladies that have joined me on my Patreon page. I created the Patreon page late last year in the hopes that some of you would want more content from me, and that would be a place to see this content in a membership type level. So there is a financial commitment when you join the Patreon page that can, you know, be started and stopped at any time. You know, the tiers between the levels can be switched and all of that. I'm very blessed to have a group of women that have signed up that support me financially, and on the other hand get to see the exclusive content that I post for them according to what's available in the tiers. So I wanted to thank in this opportunity Ran, Carol, Crystal, Jillian, Jacqueline, Jan, Janet, Jane, Julie, Liz, Masha, Mari, Myra, Pauline, Anna, Christine, Debbie, Joanne, Michelle, Pauline, Raquel, Rhonda, Susie, Tracy, Wendy, Suzanne, Black, Kat, Chris, Bonnie, Georgia, Jillian, Lorianne Payne, Laura, Meg, Vignette Francis, Sandra, Christina, CW, Angelita, and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your support. This is one of the ways I do make an income with the sewing content that I provide. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have joined me on Patreon because it is a large part of the income I make on a monthly basis, and that is hugely important to me because I am putting a lot of hours into what I do. So thank you so much. So this was the pattern that was voted for me to do the sew along. I do monthly for the ladies that are on Patreon on the Orchid tier. They get a full sew along video from me every month at the end of the month. So for them, this pattern has a full sew along there on the Patreon page, including everything. And what I'm showing you here is a summary. This is a shirt dress, and now they have named this pattern Alexis. I thought McCall's patterns just use numbers, you know, but somehow this one is called Alexis, and there are 3 views there. The main features that all these views share in common are several. They all have a notched collar. I really like that collar. I've loved that collar. It's classic. It never goes out of style. I've been sewing that type of collar since my teens. They all have side bust darts for shaping. They all have a yoke at the back that is a single layer. It's not double burritoed, so it's a bit more simpler than other shirts I've made. And there's a little pleat at the back. View A is short above the knee, nothing special with the hem, short sleeves. View B has slits on the side seams, and there's a long sleeve there that you can see. And view C is a even longer sort of midi with slits on the side and the curved hem. There are pockets on the bust, and the longer sleeves have tabs to fold them up, you know, to sort of hit 3/4 length. There is a fabric belt that you can also make as an option, and I would consider that option because otherwise this dress is pretty shapeless. If I put this dress on without the belt, it's just a sack falling from me. So I would think the belt is super necessary. If not making it, I think wearing it with a belt that you have, I think is important. In theory, when I look at the instructions, if I wanted to make view A, which is the short version with short sleeves and the belt, I would have needed 3.5 yards of fabric. I had 2 meters of fabric, which is like 2.2 yards or something like that. So I had considerably less. Because of my choice of fabric, I was limited to choosing view A, which is the short version with short sleeves, but I also wanted the bust pockets from view C. So those are my choices. I didn't want to do the slits on the side for the hem because the dress is already going to be above the knee. Having slits above that, it would just make it too short on the side. So not an option I took this time. I think McCall's makes it a little bit easier for you to check your size without having to go actually inside the pattern piece and look at what's printed on the pattern, because there's actually a chart with body measurements and some finished garment measurements, which I thought was helpful. This pattern comes in sizes extra small, that sort of sizing, and I'll put a chart here. My body measurements fall into the extra large, which is the range from size 20 to 22. And mine are exactly on the 20, like on the lowest number of that range for the bust, the waist and the hips. So I would have had to make a size extra large according to that. But there are finished garment measurements that I'll put here, and for size L that I was looking at, the bust finished is 44.5. That would give me 2.5 inches of positive ease at the bust, and I think that is appropriate for a shirt dress. I wouldn't want to have more positive ease, you know, and that's what I would get if I would make extra large. Now for the hips, on the other hand, the finished hip for size L is 45.5 inches. That would give me a pretty tight fit at the hips. So I decided to start on the L and then keep that L up to the waist, and then from the waist down, blend to an extra large to make sure my hips were fine in this style. Of course, I'm going to need to lower the dart because that is a given, and I've just recently made a video all about that. If you've missed it and you need to modify your darts, it might be super helpful for you to check that one out. On the finished measurements, there is also a completed length from here, from the back of your neck down to the hem, 38 inches. That's 96 centimeters. That is extremely short for me. So I knew I had to add some length to the dress. In Up Close and So Personal, I'm going to show you how my pattern pieces look like with the adjustments I made. Very simple ones, very simple ones. I found a mistake with the collar pieces and I could not believe what I was seeing, but they do make mistakes. There's a huge printing mistake. And if you are considering this pattern, you might find that mistake there. I'm not sure if the mistake is only on my PDF file. I don't know if that mistake is also on the printed paper patterns, you know, in the tissue and stuff. But if you do have this pattern, have a look to see if it's correct. It's pieces 7 and 8, the upper and the under collar for this dress. Is a huge error there. But I was able to recognize and do what was right there, so I'm going to share that mistake with you. And this dress has these little bust pockets with bust pocket flaps that I found was super cute. I would normally not do them if I'm working on a print. I decided to do them just to play with the stripes. I think it's always a good opportunity. So let's hop into the practical sewing. This is the front, this is the back, and I've made the same adjustment for length, which is to lengthen 3 inches. So there is a shorten and lengthen line here below the hip line. There is another one up above. I didn't think I needed to lengthen it up above of the bodice area, just down there. And 3 inches is what I wanted. I'm making view A, which is meant to hit above the knee. Because I lengthened it there was also a shorten and lengthen line there on the facing piece. That is the facing, so I've done the same. Now I really like that this pattern has lines for petites, so it's got separate lines here where it allows you to overlap if you're petite, if you're shorter than the drafted height. There's one there around the hip line and another one there for the bodice area if you're petite. Here is the shorten and lengthen line also. I think these lines are super helpful to adapt the pattern. On the front pattern piece, there is a bust point mark there. My apex point is down there, 1.5 inches lower, and I'm very used to doing these adjustments. Though an issue with the collar pieces, they are wrongly labeled, but I'm just going to tell you how I can tell what the difference is and how I'm sure I'm doing the right thing. Number 7 and number 8. They're separate pattern pieces, but on the printing there, they both say under collar. On this one though, it says cut 1 on the fold. On this one, it says cut 1 on the fold, cut 1 on interfacing, and that's also wrong. Now, I know this is the upper collar right here. I know because it's larger. I know this is the under collar because it's slightly smaller. And it says stretch there, stretch there. It means that you have to make them fit somehow. And if I place them one on top of the other properly, because they're just printed wrong, you can see that the under collar is a few millimeters smaller than the upper collar. Also in the instructions, it says to interface piece 8, whereas it says here to interface piece 7. So I'm not sure if the same error will appear on the printed pattern, but at least on the PDF that I printed, it's wrong. So 8 is the upper collar, the one that is interfaced, although it doesn't say to interface it here, and 7 is the under collar and it shouldn't be interfaced. This long one here that's dangling off the table is the belt. You can see that I have cut it on the grain line, but because the belt is going to be worn horizontally, the stripes are going to go horizontal. So that's good. I want that because the stripes will go vertical everywhere else. Those are my sleeve pieces, short sleeves. I couldn't try another option because I could barely get this dress out of 2 meters. Up there on top are the facing pieces for the dress. They are both interfaced. That is the upper collar that has been interfaced and the under collar that hasn't been interfaced. Upper collar is slightly larger than the under collar to favor the seam rolling towards the back so that it's not seen when you're wearing the dress. I think that's excellent that it's been drafted that way. These are the pocket pieces. That is what goes on the dress, and the little flaps. There's 4 pieces to cut out and 2 of those need to be interfaced. Now the upper collar has dots and notches to mark, and it's really important that they're accurate. There's a dot there, a notch there, a notch there, there. Now, what did I use to mark? I want the marks to stay. So I just got one of my son's coloring pencils, you know, the normal ones, yellow ones, and dipped it in water and made the mark. I think those marks stay a bit longer than if I use chalk. And that's the only way I can mark dark fabric, really. On the top of the facing, there's also that notch and that dot. Really important that they marked accurately because it's going to help assemble all these together precisely. I had a bit. These are the main pattern pieces. Now the stripes on these are wavy. It looks like they've been painted on in the print, so they're not exact stripes. They're not straight either. So I did no attempt whatsoever to match any type of stripe on the side. I think it's always easier working with vertical stripes, and that's how this print is on the correct grain line placing. So that's the front there. That's the back. The back there on the top is slightly wider than the yoke because there's going to be some pleats there on the center back. And the yoke is only cut once in this pattern. I did cut it with the stripes going horizontal just for visual effect. It's not burritoed or double layer like I usually like to do it. This is one of the pocket pieces. This is the wrong side of the fabric. I've marked it there so I can tell because it's really hard for me to know. So on all my pattern pieces, I just slashed it so I don't have to think about it. Now, the top part has 2 little notch marks on the side where it says you need to fold that and press, and I've done that. And it also says that on the raw edge, you need to fold 1/4 inch and press. Now, I'm not that confident in my eyeballing skills to press that accurately without measuring or anything, so I have done a guide stitch there at 1/4 inch. 5.0 stitch length, easy to remove afterwards, and then I've done it here as well at 5/8 inch so it's easier to press. So I'm going to go to the iron and press this 1/4 inch in. This other one has already been pressed, and I am using starch spray to assist with the pressing. You know, polyester doesn't press really well, so lots of steam and spray starch to get this done. And I'll do the same with the other pocket piece there. I've done that guiding stitch and I have pressed already. So this is the right side of the fabric there. And what I've done is that first fold, I've brought it over. So there's right sides together there. And there's that little 1/4 inch that they wanted you to fold. So I've already removed that guiding stitch that helped me press it accurately. So I've got them folded there, and now this little bit needs to be sewn right there at 5/8 of an inch and then flipped, and then the top of the pocket is going to be super neat. I'd forgotten to mention that I have already serged the pockets so that when they're folded and sewn on, the insides are going to be clean and there's going to be no fraying inside. So I did that before doing everything. So now this just needs to be flipped. And that's how the top of the pocket is going to be. So you can see that fold is still there dangling. That'll be top stitched later. I'm just going to tidy all this up. I'm going to hand baste it so that it keeps its shape and everything. And then I'm going to top stitch on the top there. I have the 2 pocket pieces basted. So on the inside, just to keep them nice and neat, and I've pressed them really well. And now this top bit needs to be sewn. So I'll sew that top bit there to close off the top of the pocket. So this one on the top turns out to be at 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters. So I'm just going to guide the edge of the fold there to the plate. So on the other side, that looks like that. I can actually get rid of this top basting that I had there, and it looks neat on the inside and on the outside. The front pieces have dots on the pattern to mark where the pocket placement should be or is recommended. So I've marked them on the wrong side, and I've put pins there so that I can place it on the right side of the dress. Now the bottom dots are where the pocket is going to go, and the top ones are where the flap is going to go. So I'm just going to turn this around, put the pockets on, pin them, and then sort of put it up to myself to see if it's okay or too high. I have a feeling this mark might be too high for me because the apex point was high on the pattern, but I'll see when I put it on myself. There are 2 pins there on the top, that one and this one coming out of the fabric there to reference where the placement should be, because I made the marks on the wrong side of the fabric. And so I just placed the pocket on top, and I tried to make it as nice as possible. It looks really strange because the lines are wavy, you know, but that's all right. Part of the pocket will be sewn on part of the start right there. And I guess in the original version that hasn't the bust dart lowered, like it would be up there. So the dart would be higher on the pocket, it will be lower for me. I think the placement on my body is okay for this pocket, it doesn't look strange. And I've pinned it there, and I will hand baste it on again. And then I will go and edge stitch right there. And I've done the same with the other side. There is a pocket hand basted on. You can see the 2 rows of hand basting. In the instructions it shows 2 rows of top stitching, and I would do that if I was working with a solid. So I've got my special foot, I've moved the needle to the left, and this always gives me such good results. Pockets have been sewn on. I'm happy with them. They are pretty useless, you know, I'm never putting things in there. Now there is a flap that goes there, and I have the 4 pieces there. This is the one that's going to go on top, and that is the one that goes on the bottom. I have to put them right sides together. So putting them right sides together, that needs to be sewn there, 5/8 of an inch. Both of them, and then turned right sides out. The top part will be raw. These types of areas are the ones that would benefit from a smaller seam allowance, not 5/8. Getting that point really nice and precise at 5/8 is harder than doing it with 1/4 of an inch, or even 3/8 is easier. And plus you'd have to trim this away anyhow because the seam allowance is huge for a little flap like this. That is how one pocket flap looks there. The other one the same, and this is just excessive seam allowance, so I'm just going to trim it in half just by eyeballing. So now these can be flipped. Now I like to fold these little corners like that when I flip, and then you get a little crisp point there, and same as on this other side. And I'm folding towards the flap that's not interfaced. Point in the middle, I think I'll do a little snip. So that point there isn't that noticeable because it hasn't been pressed well, but it's still not drafted to be super triangular. Like, that's how it's going to look. I've basted this first before going to the iron because this is hard to press properly and I really want this to be sharp. So I did that. It's something I do really frequently with fabrics that are not that easy to work with. I baste and then I press so that I don't have like foldy bits there or something's not nice. Okay, here is one of the fronts with the pocket already sewn, and here is one of the flaps. And now if you look inside, there's an interfaced one and the non-interfaced. Interfaced is the one that will be visible. I can tell because the design of the stripes has more black stripes there than the one on the back. And I think I like that one better on the front, so that's why I chose it. But anyway, the one that has been interfaced will go onto the fabric, so right sides to right side. So what's on the top there is the non-interfaced, and that will be underneath. So this just needs to be placed on the edge there of the pocket. And there will be a little tiny overlap there of the width, only a few millimeters, even less than 1/4 inch. This is meant to be sewn onto the dress there with the same 5/8 seam allowance that we've been using for the whole dress, and then that will flap over like that. Now this thing can't be left raw, so it's basically sewing it and then trimming the seam allowance, then folding it on top and then sewing again so that that raw area gets caught under there. Now I won't be able to reference my metal plate, so what I want to do to make it accurate is measure 5/8 of an inch and make a faint line so I can follow that reference. Okay, so I've drawn with a blue friction pen the line there that's going to reference where I'm going to sew nice and neatly. So I'm going to be very careful with this. These two flaps are ready to be sewn. There is a little seam I'm going to do with the blue friction pen. I drew it nice and straight so I can reference that. I've basted that on just to keep it secure. This flap was supposed to be top stitched before, but I really don't feel like top stitching this fabric. I don't really think it'll benefit with anything, so I'm just going to leave the flap like that. It looks nice and neat. It's been well pressed. Okay, that's been sewn and there's this raw bit right there. So the instructions say to trim this down. So I'm just going to eyeball that. Basically a really small seam allowance left there. Okay, so that excess is gone. I'm going to give this a good press to set this seam really well. And then I'm going to go ahead and top stitch. Okay, so after that was sewn, trimmed, I've pressed this down, and there's always a risk of there being a little pucker because this is so bulky when you fold it down. So I want to make sure that's really accurate, and that's why I've hand basted this to keep it really nice and flat, especially in these areas, before I go and top stitch with a 1/4 inch. I'll be using my presser foot for that so that it's really accurate, and I really don't want to back tack there. I'm going to leave it and secure it on the back so that I don't get bulk. So I'm going to start right on the edge, but on top of the flap. I don't want to start on the fabric there. That's how it's looking. That raw area has been caught in there, so it's protected. This thread, I will pull it back down there, and then I'll secure that by hand on the back, and it'll be nice and neat from the front. So that's how the pockets are going to look. Cool, huh? Here is my dress. I really like it. I pretty much know how to touch fabrics, and I've been sewing for so long. I know what fabrics are going to be easy to work with and the ones that are going to be harder to work with. And I knew from the get-go was a fabric that was not going to be easy to sew and to press. It is a polyester crepe, quite thick, I would say. You know, out of all the crepes, I think these are one of the thickest that I touch around when I buy fabric. But it's red and it's opaque, it's not shiny. I like that. And the little stripes are like being painted on, if you can see. They're not straight stripes, they're wavy stripes. So even though I knew the fabric was not going to be great to work with, I got it anyway because it was red and because I liked the wavy stripes. I thought it was original, nothing I'd seen before. So that's my reasoning behind choosing a harder to work with fabric. You saw me basting some of the steps before putting it on the iron, and I do that sometimes with difficult fabrics. And lots of steam, starch spray galore, just to help this thing go along, you know. This is a notched collar with a separate facing. There are other patterns that have a grown-on facing, and that makes the process a little bit easier. But otherwise, it's super similar. This part that goes inside here, I hand sewed that. That bit there to the other side is all hand sewn. I think it looks nicer, and the hand stitches are pretty small, pretty invisible. One thing that I would say that makes it easier than others is that it's just got a single yoke piece there. You can see the seam pressed up and the little pleats inside there. You can see that better on the back. I did place the stripes the other way. 2 little pleats. So if I were doing my normal sewing, I would cut 2 yokes and line them, and in case all those shoulder seams and that back seam with a burrito roll, and I think that would make it harder in essence. So I think maybe in that aspect this one is easier to sew than others. There you can see the cute little pockets, totally functional with a little flap. No buttonhole or button in this one, they just hang like this. And look, I found the flap okay, the construction that they tell you to do, what I've shown you there. But, you know, when I made my Melody Dolman dress months later after I made this one, I said, you know what, that method, let's make it simple and even easier to do. So I have shown you my Melody dress with this blue tencel twill, beautiful fabric, and I put bust pockets and flaps on that one. I did create my own pattern pieces for that one, and I have a tutorial on how to do that even easier than what this had. You know, so if you're interested in that, go and have a look. I'll link that blog post down below. I put a lot of buttons. I like to put more than what is recommended. The pattern piece that shows you where the buttons will be placed is just a guide. You need to know where your apex is and have a button there. If you have one above and one below, you're going to have opening and gaping, and it's not cool. So just always try it on, pin it, see where your bust height is, and then put a button there, and then make your calculations up and down, and you'll have better results there. There was no way I could get this belt in a single piece. It would have taken too much fabric, so I did have to do a seam in the middle, and it really disturbs me because it doesn't match. You can see that. So I've been thinking, and I know what I'm gonna do. I have some scraps left. I'm gonna make little belt loops, and I'm actually going to sew a belt loop onto the back of the dress. I'm going to try it on and find the height there that it needs to be, and I'm going to sew that belt loop on the middle. I'm going to sew one on the side here and one on the other side, and I'm going to put the belt there, have that middle of that seam behind that belt loop, and I'm going to actually tack it down there so that it doesn't move. That way when I wear the belt, you can see the little belt loop, but you won't see that seam. So that is something I've thought about after finishing the dress, after figuring out that seam really disturbs me. Here is the dress inside out. Here is the facing. You can see it's been interfaced, and I've serged all this raw area there. And on the other side, this is how the collar looks inside. It's super neat. What you're seeing there is the under collar, and it's got under stitching also to keep it on this side, and also the under collar is smaller than the upper collar. So this pattern has all the instructions that are going to give you a perfect collar that rolls to the back, and you're not going to have seams visible here. And I think that's brilliant. Nothing else really to show you from the inside, because once you get over the collar, you know, the pockets, the basta, all that, then it's just really simple side seams and easing in a sleeve. And the sleeve was not hard to ease in. There's not excessive ease of the cap. It's not hard to do at all. So it was really, really enjoyable for me to make this one, and I really like how it turned out. So let's see how it fits.
Don't you think this is starting to wear on me? You've been raining down like hail. I'm weak. I have tried to give you my soul, but you can't love something you own. It's too late to repair what we made. What can I do? Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon. The sun don't rise, all the light is gone from me and you. Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon. The sun don't rise, all the light is gone from me and you. It's a shame to watch us fade away, but all the beautiful things we made are great. I have tried to give you my life, but you can't see in the dirt of the light. I'm alone.
Of course, I want to make this pattern again as a blouse. Totally doable. Just make it shorter. It's got the collar I like. I've got the fit I want. I've adjusted the bust-out. I know it fits. So, you know, it'll be a waste to not use this pattern again, of course. I am a pattern repeater. I hope you consider doing that too, because it's more cost effective. You know, if you spend the money on a pattern, which for me was more expensive than other patterns, I want to make it at least 3 times to make it worthwhile financially, and because I enjoy repeating a pattern. The first time I learnt the pattern, the second time is just free sewing, mindless sewing, really, really fun, relaxed sewing. I don't know about you, but I am getting a little bit anxious about everything that's going on. I'm worried about my parents that are far away. We are talking daily, you know, all of us are taking all the precautions we can. But it's starting to get to me. It is starting to get to me, and I am just like you. I'm like everyone else that is really worried. Everything is not just passing by, and I'm just trying to live my life normally. I try my best, but it is getting to me. So sewing wise, what does that mean? I need maybe just to whip out some knit patterns. I need to relax a little bit and sew some of the knit garments I have been planning to sew. I think that will help me just relax a little bit, and then maybe go back and tackle some more involved makes. So I don't know, I've got to do something to feel good. Sewing is what keeps me happy every single day, and I am feeling the anxious bit, the stress bit creeping up on me because everything that's going on, you know. Praying every day, just having a lot of faith, and my heart goes out to you if you're being directly impacted by this, health-wise, work-wise, financially, everything. I just hope we can all go through this and come out on the other side as best we can. So I'm sending you hugs. I will see you again in a few more days with another sewing video. Probably knit makes, maybe not. We shall see. But I'll see you soon. Bye.
It's a shame to watch us fade away, but all the beautiful things we